$1,000. But for $99, I said, "Oh, we can try." And I put Windows 7 and hard drive in, and I am just, it's like a brand new computer.
Right. That's what I mean. Hard drive.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm almost there.
They optimize as you use them too. They have this optimizing algorithm that looks at what you use the most.
Right.
And puts
Put that
that
in
into that flash.
that harder section.
Yeah, the FCP section.
I noticed that one thing they didn't disclose is how much memory was dedicated to the hard drive.
They typically say that. Just in case
And I went through a lot of write-ups and I couldn't really find anything that says 4 gig, 8 gig, 32 gig. It just said 200 RPM. Right.
Yeah, you want to get as fast a spindle speed as you can to the house.
Well, I have no problem with that speed.
Well, 7200 is good, but some other 6400 if you have a choice. And if you can get 10, get it out.
Okay, so here we are. We're going to talk about PHP frameworks, Code Igniter tonight.
Have a question about the previous assignment?
But first, we'll talk about the previous assignment. Yeah, go ahead.
I just noticed that it really slows down the site loading to have the lookup for the videos on there. I was wondering if you had thought about any ways to make that faster.
I haven't.
It's just the hit the query done, for some reason it's like really slow.
Well,
What it was before.
I used to thought it was slow, but I didn't think it was slow.
What is your query like? Is it going to get a lot of things back?
I'm just getting 5 items.
I haven't looked at that. So it kind of goes to show you wouldn't put that on every page or that kind of thing on every page.
I was thinking maybe store them in a database, but then how would you know if they have something more relevant?
Yeah, or expired, and that's kind of the whole reason for doing the query on the fly to get recent stuff. It's probably just, I'm guessing it's YouTube being slow. That's what I'm guessing, and it's just going to cost to be able to do that, and so. You probably wouldn't put it on an index page. Maybe you'd put it on a page behind or something that. But I haven't seen that. I haven't seen what to do. I was just going to run Stevens because I know it. Yeah. Yeah, that was probably 3 or 4 seconds to get that page up. It was still pretty slow.
But it's not bad here. It's actually a lot faster.
Huh. I don't know if it's the internet here, or I don't think it's internet related. Maybe it's just the time of day, or how many people happen to be hitting it, or how much streaming's going on YouTube, or something like that.
Right now it's not bad.
Okay.
It's like you can count to 3 or 4 before the page is.
Stephen got his homework done early again, so it gives me a good.
I had questions.
Yeah, we had questions about it too, but let me show you his homework first. So that was a good job. So that's getting the, getting stuff out of this database. Let me see what happens when I do that. Parent tester, Laughlin Road. Great. It uses all of the features of it. Now you did mention that you didn't do like the error checking on the ad page.
Yeah, on the fun stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to get that done, so
Okay.
I used to look at the geocode lookup to get all my
Just manually and then put it in the database?
No, actually, it's commented out on the code.
Okay.
When I was working on this thing, just to check what I was doing. I looked them up first and then went to map after that, print them out. So I just ran that and then just copied and pasted the stuff into the database. But, so I mean, it's looking all the stuff up. I wanted to know how to put up a photograph in image inside of this.
A photograph inside here?
Yeah.
So using it, just the HTML image tag didn't work.
It didn't work. I couldn't get it to work. Now I know that the break tag works because that's why it's on separate lines there.
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering, did you fully qualify the image? If you use an image tag, you can kind of do relative.
If I recall it, I think I used the whole.
Did you use the HTTP : / the whole URL, not a file name?
I think I used the whole URL.
See, that's what I would expect that to work. But
I have a feeling that somehow it got messed up with some quote marks or something. So I'm not sure.
okay.
But I noticed his markers. He's pulling the images for his markers and stuff out of, I guess, a file over on.
He has ways of, you can use different markers on the maps.
Right.
And he has examples of using different markers on the maps.
But I don't know how he's actually pulling the stuff. In order to maybe do that, it would have to be pulled differently, you know, out of where the stuff's stored. I'm not really sure.
Okay. Okay.
I would have added the photos if I could.
Okay. I see your question, Cal. I think it's working mostly because I mean I'm logged into it with FileZilla right here. Oops. No. Yeah, it always does. It times out very fast. But if I expand something, so that's getting in to look for Terry. So I think it's working, Cal, and it's serving websites off of it as well. So it's both the output and the input side that I can tell is working. So I'm not sure, what it could be, Cal. So the graphics in here, that's a good question. You would think that would work.
You mean to put the image of the person in the pop-up?
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to do. But
That would be kind of cool.
Some crazy things.
Didn't you say last week you can put any HTML in there that you want?
Yeah, I said that. No, I could have been lying.
Well, that's probably a couple of questions that I sent you because on that person's code, he's got two lines that he put into the head section.
Yeah.
And they don't need to be there.
No, I think that was just a convenient place for him to put those two lines, because those two lines I think basically just loaded the JavaScript, Java overhead.
Right. And a lot of times, generally, that does go on the head section on the page.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to say, when I tried to do it, my thought was, I got the template, and basically the pages are being put, in the middle of that. So I just figured that, well, I don't want to keep calling all this extra code if I don't have to.
Oh, that's a good point. That's a good argument for not putting it in a header.
So,
if you've made a template for
put a
it.
conditional in there, and I couldn't get it to work there.
Okay.
And so I just put it actually on the page.
On the page where you needed it.
Right next to the div, and it worked.
Okay.
So that's why I was wondering why you did it that way.
I think it's kind of a, I just think it was his choice. You know, to put it in the header is kind of, he knows he's going to have it. It was the first thing out on the page. He didn't have, in his examples, he doesn't have templates for that. So it didn't really matter where he put it. It just had to be there. Yeah.
And then the other question I had was left angle bracket question mark equals.
Yeah.
Supposedly that is a shortcut for the echo statement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I looked that up after you mentioned it because I hadn't seen. I had just kind of glossed over that when I looked at his material, and and so I had to look it up too, and that's basically what it is. It's a shortcut to execute what's there and echo the results.
So it's actually doing more than just echo?
Well, it
actually doing an echo, you know, and
well,
it doesn't work.
What you could be echoing might be calling a function, okay, and the output of the function was a string. So I think you could put inside that the calling of the function. Isn't that kind of what he did too?
Well, I kind of didn't know what he was doing. Trial and error and trying, not use this. I mean, I was lucky I found where I could change the size of the map, you know, in code.
Mm-hmm. Where is that? There it is. Oh, no, that's not it. There it is down here. So he is actually doing exactly what I just mentioned. This is calling a method on an object.
Right.
Okay, so it's calling a method on an object that is returning a string. The string is a bunch of Java script that it's returning.
Okay, so generally, if you look at it say echo whatever, there's a good chance it would just echo out. I guess part of that.
You probably could have.
Necessarily executed.
It doesn't have to be executed. Yeah.
It might be more an execute function than an echo function. So if the first thing back in the string tells it that it's a JavaScript object, then it executes.
Well, the JavaScript basically is just getting sent down to the browser. It's not getting executed.
Okay.
Not on the server. It's just
So it goes down as text.
It's just flows down as text to the browser, and then the right markup around it tells the browser, oh, this is JavaScript. The browser needs to execute it. The browser says I have to execute it.
That would have to be in the string.
That would have to be in the string. And when you look at it, if you just do view page source, you see that. That's the way I looked at this. I saw the head. I saw this. If you just look at it, you can see the JavaScript that these two things just created and sent down to the browser. So I don't have a lot of experience with this syntax, but I would bet you could just put quote text end quote, and that would work inside here as well. It's going to echo it. It's going to send it down. Okay. Guys over here are having a conversation. You know, if the server, my login to the server is saying, okay.
I'm going to have trouble a lot of times with the server if where we go in active.
Yeah.
Didn't come back. So,
Well, I notice when I'm using it as well. I mean, when I'm use file, it always does this kind of thing, where it says connection closed.
Yeah, because that one, I have no problem with it.
Yeah.
It's my editor.
It's what?
It's the editor that I use.
Oh, it's the editor you use that kind of automatic.
I never have any problem with it.
Okay. Okay. Login, well, I don't know, Cal. I'll test after class. I'll test logging in just to make sure I can log in and let you know. Okay. Any other questions on the class on this assignment? Good job, Stephen, on this one. Fits right in. Anything else?
I was going to try that cluster thing too, but I couldn't find out how we did that one.
How we did that one. Okay. Well, you know, that's going to be a lot of. I mean, the web is so dynamic, and these tools are so dynamic. It's difficult to even get a book sometimes on a certain area. So you have to kind of pick it up these ways. Go into the site, reading their documentation that they give you.
He didn't have any other than the examples, and then you have to look at the code.
Yeah, well, that's true. He didn't say yes. That's true.
No, you should look at this line here if you want to do X, Y, Z.
Yeah, no, that's true. I went to, one of these to see if they had done anything special, but this is all pretty much straight
Well, you know,
HTML.
Gold up there, and you've got a link up there, so there's the HTML in there.
Yeah, there is more than just breaks in there.
Right.
Yeah. So,
Maybe I can get it wrong. Try it again.
okay. Well, okay. So we're gonna. Any other questions about assignments? On the topic of assignments, there's several people that are behind, and I want to give them a chance to. This wasn't for you, Tim. Okay. I wanted to give you a chance to salvage your grade if you know the stuff. So the way I'd like to do that is, if you get too late on some of the assignments, the way I had to take five points off until forever is what I had. And so if you got too late with an assignment, it got to the point where it wasn't worth doing it anymore at all. And I'd rather have you learn the material. And I wanted you to be able to catch up. So that's one of the reasons I'm doing these last two assignments are all extra credit. So they just add points to your score. So I'll add those points in, but not divide by those assignments in the end. So they'll just bring up your score, whatever they are. And so if you get 100 on those, that's great. The other thing I'll do is I'll cap what I'll take off to 30 points. So if you turn it in and it's good, it's 100%, then and you're 2 weeks late, I'll go ahead and give you 70 points for it. So you can get a C easily that way, I think. Okay. So I'll email that out so folks can understand that. Now, so we're ready to talk about CodeIgniter? You guys ready for that? This was fun, but we could probably spend 2 or 3 weeks on CodeIgniter. We can get a good start on it tonight, and we can do one of the first examples. What I would do if I did another night is I'd just talk more about it, and the assignment would be a little more demanding in that it would fit it into our database. The assignment for this class would be re-implementing one of their examples, just right out of their tutorial. Get it up to your website, get it running, their example exactly. So it's mostly, you have to get it up, configure it, and understand the different parts of where you put things. So we're going to go through some of that tonight. The assignment, this website, this is the link right here to the website for CodeIgniter. Now they have documentation, Stephen, words and everything. Okay, it's not just examples. It actually, I thought, was fairly good, except for the only downside is it was a little bit difficult to jump into the middle of the page and kind of understand what was going on. You had to sometimes back up to the beginning of the page to get all the way down, especially this left-hand column, basic info, installation, tutorial. And tutorials are kind of like that. You know, they kind of lead you through anyway, so you'd expect that. General topics is a little more referencey, okay, which means it's a little more you can just kind of look up what you want to find. Although they recommend that to pick up CodeIgniter is you do this whole first column and you read the second column as well, and then use the last two columns as reference. That's their suggestion. Right here, I didn't actually create a link for it this time. So let me talk about that near the end. But this is going to be the assignment. It's right down here. So, and that tutorial when you go through this tutorial, you create a little news application. That's what I want you to do. They give you all the code for it. So it ought to be relatively easy, but you have to kind of understand where all the parts and pieces fit. They explain it, and you have to kind of put it together. I think it's worth doing to learn the tool.
So this is going to be a whole separate directory.
Separate directory. It won't be related to your other. Yeah, you won't have to mess up your old one. Just create a directory fresh for this one. Let's just talk about installation.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, can you talk about what it is?
Oh, sure. Yeah, what is it? That's a good question. So they call CodeIgniter a framework, a coding framework, and basically it is a set of tools and classes and objects to help shortcut a lot of the coding you've done this whole semester. Now you have to understand PHP and what it's doing for you. You had to have taken today's class, but this tool is a way to make you more productive as a PHP coder. It's not an IDE. It's not the editor. It is an actual set of classes and libraries that you put up on your site that you end up coding around and using. Okay. They had one of their pages kind of described it.
Anything semi-similar to jQuery?
I don't know what jQuery is.
It does a lot of stuff for you like this. You know, if you want to hide something, it's hide.
They have aspects of that. So Stephen just asked if it was like jQuery, and it sounds from that description that jQuery is like a library of functions and that you can call that basically do things that you often need to do on a web page, and it makes it real short, makes it much easier, kind of does the JavaScript coding underneath for you.
Basically, you can call out any element on the page, just the way you would do with the CSS.
Yeah. Now, so CodeIgniter's like that, especially this left-hand column here called helper reference. It has a whole set of helper functions, which they're really not classes, they're just functions to help you code. So if you go to one that's more familiar, let's just go to HTML helper. You can, it's got a BR function. This is a PHP function. So the way you would use it is you would say, in your PHP code, you would say echo BR left paren 3 right paren. It sticks 3 break tags into your code for you. this part right here is something you have to do somewhere in your application to kind of tell CodeIgniter, I want to use this. CodeIgniter is very configurable, and it's they call it lightweight, in that it's not there unless you need it. And so that puts a little bit of overhead in that you'll need to put this in like, say, a header and template, so that it gets loaded on any page that you're in, that you want to use any of these functions in. So these are, you want to put in an image tag. Instead of actually coding the image tag, you just say echo image, and you give it the path to the image. It's going to put the tag in to display an image in your code right here.
Are these functions like writing the HTML code? You type whatever it is you're doing over here, and eventually the output is going to be all HTML here, which is what you put up on the server.
Well, look what it's doing. The simple case here, echo, it just echoes the output of this function. So if you looked at the string that this function is returning, it would be less than sign BR greater than sign, less than sign BR greater than sign. Do that 3 times.
Right.
And when you say echo, it just is going to be the output of your PHP script. It's going to echo that part.
So basically, your HTML, you're doing everything inside of, let's say, the PHP code, more or less.
This has to be executed inside of PHP tags. So this is creating the HTML inside of your PHP script.
Okay. So instead of going in and out, you're almost staying in.
This allows you to stay in for much more of it, if not most of it.
This is the same thing, echo, single quote, BR, right?
Yeah. And so some of these others are a little more sophisticated, so the image does a little bit more for you. If you notice this image class, if you create this array called image properties, you can control more of what this img function does. So you can control the width, a lot of things that you'd want to do on an image tag. So you create this information about the image, and you just give it to the image function down here. So notice up here, the most simplest use of it, you just give it the picture, and it's going to display it just like if you did an image tag in your HTML and didn't put on any of the attributes on the image tag that controls its size and any other aspects of it. But if you want to do that control, which oftentimes you do, this is how you would do it, by using this image function. And basically you can kind of tell what it's doing. These are all attributes on that tag. You know what I mean when I say attribute on a tag?
It almost seems like there's more typing involved in that than just doing it.
Possibly, but just think what you could do. If you put all this stuff in a database, you could get this data from all kinds of places and just call it. And maybe for this one, maybe it is more typing, but you look down at, there's one here for, oh, this one is pretty cool. For lists, you just create an array of whatever hierarchy you want and give it to the list function, and it will then just create the list for you. So a lot of times you're iterating through, an array of data and populating a list yourself and making sure all the attributes are correct. This does all that for you. I think that saves you a lot. Okay? There's a ton of these, okay, different little helper functions. So the more, this is the kind of thing, the more you learn about what it's capable of doing for you, the more helpful it is to you. But there's overhead to learn it on any of these. I'm not asking you to learn it all, for this class. I'm just trying to introduce you to a tool like this so that you can make a choice. Or, I sent out that one job opportunity, and the guy wanted somebody with experience with CodeIgniter, because they're using it in their shop. And if you got another job, opportunity, they might want something else. There might be another one out there. I'm sure there's plenty of these things out there. But they all will use this same kind of technique, this same kind of approach to do it. Of course, CodeIgniter thinks that they're the greatest things. They all, yeah. What was it, Smarty templates?
Smarty templates that are on the page.
Yeah, they think they're the greatest things. But you can think date helper, directory helper, handling files, email helper, file helper. So you can almost think of anything we've done in our class. They probably have a helper in here to help it. Okay, now let's get into the actual CodeIgniter. It talks about, and Stephen asked this before, this model view controller development pattern. Now, there are many tools out there that corporations buy or to help productivity in web design and web development. A lot of them try to separate coding and logic from look and feel and views of the pages. And this model view controller development pattern is an effort to do that, to kind of separate the logical chunks of the site into different places. So somebody that's really good at graphics design can handle the graphics design part, and you give them a few rules to follow and about here's how you get your data and how you interface with the rest of the system. But you can do, other than that, you can do anything you want with the page. It's yours. And it separates it from it. And the database guy can look someplace else in the system and say, here's all the database information for your application. And he can change his database and change his, gosh, this place is erupting. Yeah. The only time, last time I got called was this last Sunday, and I was up on the worship team, and my phone rang. Like I was at front. That is embarrassing. So they're basically trying to separate the parts. So the view part in the model view controller is typically HTML-like things. It generates what the page is going to look like. The model part represents data, or how your data is going to be gotten, going to be updated. It's the data portion of your application. The controller part is the glue in between that calls the model and displays the views. Okay, supplies the data that the view needs, and then calls the views. So those are the three parts of this they call it a programming or development pattern. What I just said is pretty generic, and I'm going to show you specific details for that in just a second. But does that make sense to you?
originally came from Smalltalk.
Did it really? Okay. Jeff just mentioned it originally came from Smalltalk.
At least that's where
First, not CodeIgniter, the
model view controller.
model view controller kind of programming pattern.
It's a programming language. So, yeah,
I've never used it. I've never heard of it.
Objective-C is actually based off of it and C. So,
That's another program, yeah. Probably came from something like that. So,
Where do you find control? Is it like part of one or the other?
it's going to be here. Let's get into that. So I'm going to show you right here 2 parts to start with. Here's their first example they create is doesn't use the 3 parts. It just uses 2 of the parts. It just displays a page, so it doesn't use the model part of it. It just has a view and a controller. So here is the CodeIgniter page that displays either the home page or the about page. And so they're pretty darn simple, just a little bit of text.
So where is the text coming from? Then it should be coming from a model.
The text doesn't come from a model, it comes from a view. That's
Well, the view is supposed to display content from the model, right?
yes, that's correct. This text happens to be the view. It's that stuff that's not dynamic. It's not data. So it doesn't come from this is going to be here all the time. Okay, this text. There was. Let me show you what the controller looks like for this. So here's the controller for that part that I just. So all of the controllers and the models, all are classes that extend either CI controller or CI model. So this one, and again, what does this do for you? This extending of a base class. There's a whole bunch of code underneath that is contained within CI controller that you have access to because you're extending it in your class called pages. Okay, so when you don't understand where something comes from, it's likely to come from the base class. And their documentation is what describes all the things you have available to you in the base class. So you're going to define a method in your class called pages. It's called view. It has one parameter called page. Its default value will be home. So if somebody calls this function view without a parameter, it will default to the home page. Very first thing it does is it goes and looks in application views pages for this page to see if it's there or not. So it uses this home and concatenates.php and it's looking for, in this directory, a file called, by default, home.php. So it's looking for that page. If it doesn't find it, it's going to show an error page. If it does find it, it's going to build.
Well, it does that anyway. Unless show 404 throws
It doesn't do that anyway.
throw an exception.
So let's put an X there.
Yeah, but
So 404 exited the PHP file.
So that was exit. Okay.
Yeah. So that's what that 404 did. That's what that call did. Show 404, and it also exited.
That's a little misleading because you look at that and you don't know what it looks like a regular
Yeah, you can argue both ways on that. When you show a 404, you're never going to want to go on. Is their assumption. Okay? Possibly you can think of some reason you want to go on, but if you're going to show an error page, it's likely you're not going to show anything else, so you're not going to go on. So they've embedded in there an exit.
The public function view page gets home. Now, so that was
Excuse me, where?
that's line 6.
Yep. That line?
Right. When this gets called, I guess, where it's getting called from, if you say pages equal to pages or whatever that other one was, that for that to override what the default is then? Or is that actually another file? In other words, is this set up basically so that this is the home page period here?
This controller is going to display any page that you ask it to. And if you pass in a parameter here, and you say about, which is the other page that I have built, it will display the about page.
Okay, so if you don't pass it anything and then it defaults to home.
Right. If you don't pass it anything, it'll default to home.
Is that normal behavior, I guess, on these? This is a function, this is a method, right?
This is a method, and it's normal, it's common to have what's called optional parameters on methods, which means you don't have to fill them in, and they have a good default value. They'll do what's most likely you want it to do if you don't pass it a parameter.
So obviously none of because I've seen that before, and I've often wondered why isn't it something else that's coming in. And
So it's something. If you fill in about, then it overrides this. Yes, it override. In the strictly object-oriented programming terminology, that's not an override because they have overriding. Overriding has another meaning, but page will have either the value you pass in, or if you don't pass in anything else, it'll have the value home.
And that's PHP syntax?
This is just pure PHP syntax. That's nothing to do about CodeIgniter. In fact, a lot of the stuff that's used in here, CodeIgniter is just PHP. You can look down inside it, and all these things is just PHP code.
With an extra set of functions from the language.
They've defined a set of things inside PHP for you to use.
They're not using jQuery or themselves.
Now they may have some helpers, I didn't look, that help you with jQuery, but it's doing it with PHP. Okay, so we've gotten down here. Now this is again just PHP. It says build me an array, and if it's already there, add this item to it called title. And I'm going to use a function that's defined in the base class called uppercase first, or UC first. All that's going to do is going to uppercase the first character. And what it's going to use for the title for this page is the name of the page that you pass in with the first character uppercased, capitalized. And it's going to stuff it in this array. Okay?
And that array is there to associate with, right?
Yes. Now again, remember that PHP arrays are very flexible. You can put anything you want in them. It's like, I mean, first, they're pretty confusing because of that too sometimes. But you know what? The first entry could be associative. This one is associated with title. The second element, you don't have to have a key for it. It'll just number it by default. It's going to number it. It'll be in there as well. you know, this first one is going to be text, the second one could be an object with a bunch of more things in it. So it's just very flexible. And CodeIgniter kind of exploits that and uses PHP variables to pass things around. So what it's doing here in the controller, it's building this array called data to be able to pass to the views information that they may want to have. Like, and here it's going to load a view, and here's the view it's going to load, and it's going to pass the data along to it as well. Same thing. So it's going to load the actual page, and it's going to load a footer. So here's the controller basically building your page for you by loading a header, the body of the page, and then a footer.
So view is what we're defining here, right?
No, this is a controller.
No, but I'm saying
The controller is building the views. This is how the controller is interacting with the views. And I haven't shown you the view yet.
I thought that's what we were doing here.
Function.
The view method on those lines 17, 18, and 19 is a different method than the one we're in.
Yes. So this is exactly. So this is a function that we're defining inside our class called pages. It's called view. There's another view method down inside. Okay, now this.
Pulled that up from CI controller when it extended it.
When it extended it, pulled it up from CI controller when it extended it. So now it's going to use another object inside of this, which is a CI controller, that happens to have a method on it called view as well. A little confusing to have named these both the same thing, but it's an appropriate name in either way.
I mean, you can't see what's available.
And that is a common complaint against object-oriented programming. You've got to have good documentation of what that class is you're inheriting from, or you don't know what you got. It doesn't just show up. Now, a lot of IDEs for C# and even some for C++ have, what do they call it, Jeff? It's not code completion. IntelliSense. Okay. Where you get a list of what's available. And if you hover over it, it actually gives you a little bit of documentation, a few words about what the thing does as well. So it kind of helps you along the way as you're coding to find what it is. This doesn't, you have to know. Yes.
Well, it's just because they haven't added it. They could add it in here and it would automatically pick that up in the right kind of IDE.
In the right kind of IDE, that's true. It would.
The data variable, the array,
Yes?
that we pass to the templates and pages and whatever put it,
Mm-hmm.
that contains a lot of data.
Could contain a lot of data.
And so,
The only thing we know about it that it contains right now is one item called title.
so when those things load up or whatever it is, they know which one to take out.
They know what they need. Okay, so let's look. I didn't open. I should have opened.
Oh, and then one other little question. So that's the controller, but that's actually the page you went to. That's the URL page.
It is.
Is that generally how that's done? The controller is like the URL?
It turns out and they talk about this in CodeIgniter. The index.php in this URL is kind of always there. It's kind of the main PHP file for CodeIgniter. The next thing Okay, this is confusing too. The way this would typically,
Those are called actions, right? No.
this is what you'd usually see. Okay, now something they also talk about is they've created some shortcuts so you don't have to, your URL doesn't have to look like this. So conical.
Yeah.
I don't know what
Normally on
that.
the URL,
Canonical.
you get to have that extension there.
Yes. This doesn't have it, right?
You want to make a mod rewrite or something someplace.
Yeah, I'm going to show you that. And there's a configuration file that remaps these. But if you didn't do the remapping, the first thing is the controller, and the second thing is a parameter to the controller.
So they're trying to do
Okay.
like Ruby on Rails.
I don't know what Ruby on Rails is. That's what it is.
Ruby on Rails is.
Okay. So this is the controller. This is the class that we're just looking at, and this is the parameter to it. Now there was a shortcut that I'll show you, or a kind of a remapping of URLs that allowed us to take that part out. And it's just the parameter part. So it's going to automatically call the controller view and pass it this parameter called about. So I was going to start showing you now, we've got our first controller, so we'll start showing you some views. So
So the controller directory is going to have all of the
controllers has all the controllers,
basically,
right? So we had that one called pages. That's what we were looking at. Now the views has all the views, and then there's also a templates. Views? Yes. So we put some standardized things underneath views, but in a directory called templates. So this is a view. It is this first thing that we saw in pages. It's loading this one called header. Notice it includes the directory structure, templates/header. So it's always going to look in the views directory, and our convention was to put all of our standard template-like things inside a templates directory, and it's going to grab one called header. It assumes it's the .php because you just say header. You don't say header.php. So what does it have? Typical stuff at the top of a HTML page. But notice this part right here. Drop into PHP, echo $title. So it has that data that was passed into this controller has been stripped down, and now you don't have to say data, quote, title. You can just access a variable of each of the entries in that data array. So it's kind of expanded to you. So you have now variables available to you in this file, in this view file, for each of the entries you put in your data array. So it's going to use this title in the header for whatever page it's going to be on. Close ahead. So really simple. Let's look at the body of this page called home. Where's the body? Not very complicated. Just some text and a break.
So that other page we were looking at there, that's the body page.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So that's going to be so our controller included that first, and then it included home, and then it included the footer. Views, pages, use templates. Footer.
Close up the body tag.
Yep. Puts a little copyright tag at the bottom, so you end up with this little bit, and you also end up with valid HTML file sent down to the browser. So it closes the body and closes the HTML tag.
I would assume that it is possible to, let's say, do a template that the whole page, you just start inserting things inside of it. You don't have to throw it apart like this.
You could probably do it either way. It just kind of depends on which way would be easier.
Well, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah,
It more sense to migrate from things or do it this way.
yeah, and see, but if you make one big template, it becomes much more complex because now you got to pass down all the different parts to it. Your controller would be simpler. It just says view one thing, right?
I mean, wouldn't it be, let's say, use this and put it right in the middle of the template, or
There's no positioning here. It's just that this is just
load one right after the
just
other?
load one right after another. So each one of them will have to handle the way they look themselves.
So in a sense, if you're designing something and you have a mock-up, eventually you end up like cutting it apart, so to speak.
Yeah, and oftentimes you do in a lot of different web pages. You're cutting apart graphics and cutting apart different things to put it in a table to get them to line up correctly.
Well, but that table is just not the same. Inside the table is the same as what we're doing.
It's not quite the same. It's still different. You're right. Okay, so I'm going to go on to an example that contains data and it has a model. We didn't actually use a model here.
And you notice on the introduction, I thought there was a sentence that we don't necessarily use models.
We don't yet necessarily use templates. They don't necessarily use
The definition that you brought up before, where it was, building a fairly loose approach, some models are not required.
It's true. There's nothing in CodeIgniter that makes you use any of these. You could have just one file and it would just load it. That's not their suggested use model. That's why they have this model view controller.
Oh, so this isn't like automatically making certain decisions about automatically putting certain files in certain directories. That's just the added.
You put them in certain directories so that it knows where to find them. And if you don't put anything there and don't call them, then it's fine.
So, in a sense, this is basically a helper.
Yeah, in a sense.
Functions and things like that.
In a sense, it is a whole lot of helper, a whole lot of help. So let's look at this example. So here's the people page. Now again, there's a controller behind this, and we'll look at the controller first. Well, actually, let's look at the model first. That's one thing we haven't looked at yet. So here's the model, class people model. Now, when you read the direction, read the documentation on this, the names of here are important. Classes have to start with an uppercase for CodeIgniter, and the models have to end with _model. That's how it knows it's a model. So it describes that in there, but I just want to make sure you realize that that's significant. Here is a constructor, and what the constructor does is Again, this is the this extends the CI model class, which has a lot of data methods underneath, and so it has a way to open and connect to a database just built into it. So we've now connected to the database. As soon as this class is created, we've connected to the database.
The CI model and the CI view, et cetera, those are core components of this, and they've already done all that work.
Right.
All the definitions and stuff, and all you're doing is, once you have a sense of what they've done, you're then building on top of that.
Exactly. So you're building. They've done a lot of work for you that you're building on top of.
Where does the node that gets the information on what's about?
Okay. And part of it when you do your installation and configuration. So underneath application, there's a config, and there's a database.php. And this should look familiar. This is our connection. That's basically the same stuff out of our connect bars. Again, when you do the install, it says if you have a database, this is where you can come modify these fields.
What if you wanted to switch back and forth between multiple servers? How do you do that with this?
I don't know.
Probably
Good
not
question.
ways to actually do connections with people, right?
Because most professional frameworks will have a way to
Well, I'm
put a production database or a debug database or development database versus a
yeah. So I'm guessing this is a multi-dimensional array. This variable called db. The first dimension for all of these you're defining the default database.
So active group, if you wanted to change it, you could, okay, that makes sense.
So it looks like, just by looking at it, you can figure that out. And I bet this active group variable lets you choose which connection group to make active. By default, there is only one group, the default group. So, good question, though. Multiple ways to do it. But that's where all the connection stuff is right there. And that's how this thing knows how to open up the database. So now I've got one function called getPerson. And again, there's one of those defaulted parameters. The default value of that parameter is false. So if the parameter is false, what am I going to do? I'm going to do a query against the database, and it's going to be this db get people. People is the table name. So that's going to get all the values. It's like a select star, select from table name star. I can't remember the syntax anymore. But that's like selecting all the columns out of and all the rows out of a table. So that gets that and puts the kind of a handle for that result in this variable called query. And then to get the actual results, you're going to return query. Another method on this object is called result array, and it gives you the result array. So that is if ID is equal to true. False. What if ID is equal to something else? It's going to fall down here and actually use ID in a where clause. So it uses a different method here. It's not just a get, it's a get where from the table name, and then an array of an associative array of IDs, of basically values for columns that you want the select to use on your database. This one's going to only use one. Means you could say IDs want this thing, and you know, last name is this, or first name is Terry and last name is Haynes. So you could search on multiple columns at the
Yeah,
same time.
where can you do that, but this method's only returning either all of them or one of them.
Okay, so that's one of them.
Yeah. So this method, yeah.
Array method is just, you know, show a whole bunch of things that you just these tens.
Yeah. Now this method gives you all of them or just one of them. And you could write a method to give more. I mean, you can give them a list, but this parameter you'd send in would probably be an array of names, and you'd have to do it in a different way inside. Yeah, Mark.
Any parameter where you're automatically assigning false to it.
So again, the way you read this is if ID is not passed in, give it the value false. So if somebody calls this method, get person, open parentheses, close parentheses, nothing inside, it's going to have the value false. If they say open paren, quote, 3, end quote, right paren, it's going to pass in the string with the number 3, and it's going to take that as an ID and use it in the where clause. Yeah. Right. Okay. Now the second method here is updating the database. I haven't used it in the code, so I don't know if it's correct or not. Just to, as a disclaimer. So, has never been run, so we don't know it works. But the general concept is correct.
This is your code? Or
It's my code.
okay.
All this code that I'm showing you, I wrote, and the top part is executing. This part, I haven't. I didn't create a controller that called it.
How much does the tutorial do this?
The tutorial does all of this stuff.
So the tutorial does give us what you've written, more or less.
Gives you it all.
Oh, okay.
You have it all. It's going to be so easy, Steve.
So when you say you wrote all of that, it's like
I wrote this.
see a blank page, you're not gonna
I figure I haven't
group stuff.
learned something until I've translated it into something other than the example. So these are not the exact example out of the tutorial, but I use the tutorial to say, okay, this is how you do this. How do I do this on my database, which has these things in it? Okay, so I translated this into kind of our,
So it would work for what we've done.
yeah, so it would work for what we got up there. But again, your assignment is not to do it against your database unless you want to. Okay, you can try it. It's fine. But I got into this far enough to say we needed more time to do this. I mean, to do at least one more, maybe 2 more. I don't know, weeks to do this. Because I think the first assignment is to just follow the tutorial and create the same application they created, which does do selects, has all these similar functions as these. It's going to get one or get multiple. It's going to actually update the database as well. It only has 2 fields in the database, so it's a little simpler. But you can see what this guy is doing. It says the set person is going to use this input. There's an object in the model called input, which has a method called post, which will return the value of whatever key that's in the post variable. And that's the post that comes from the form. So this is how you access the post data when somebody hits the submit button on a form. Is this way. So it's just gathering up all of these guys. It's creating an associative array with all of these keys in it with these values. And then it passes those off to the database. Insert a record into the database. There's the table name that you're inserting it into, and this is the data you want inserted. These are going to be column names in the database, and this is data for those columns. So it really does simplify a lot of, and
Because the data is inside that function, it's obviously totally not aware of the other data that's right now.
yeah, it doesn't, that's right. That's scoping.
Right.
And you know, in some languages everything's global, but not in this. So this is a real object-oriented language. So that this data is a different kind of data. This is being created right here.
Possibly would help to keep the names different.
Yeah. You'll notice that people that are really familiar with object-oriented programming, they will often name things the same on purpose in different scopes. If they have the same type of functionality, even though they're not the same thing, but they're the same kind of variable. So this is a data variable, and I'm going to pass it off to this thing. It's a different data variable than the one we were using before, but it's a data variable. So oftentimes, kind of object-oriented type folks will do this on purpose because it makes sense to them that this is that kind of variable, and it has a meaning to me as that, oh, it's just a data variable, okay? And they immediately understand that it's inside the scope because they're so familiar with object-oriented programming, and they know it's not the same as the other, as one they used in some other function.
Just keep you from having to come up with arbitrary variable names. Just
Yeah.
typos because you forget which one is which.
Right.
But if you get the scope wrong, then it creates different kinds of mistakes.
If you get the scope wrong, you're screwed up. Okay. So we looked at the people model. So let's look at the people. What is this? This is, I'm looking at the tag that shows up underneath. So this is the people controller. So this is in the application controllers people.php directory. So it's extending again the controller class. Here's the constructor for this one. Now, this is one of the things they say in their documentation is if you're going to have your own constructor, call ours, please. Okay, it's basically what they say, because in PHP, if you have a constructor, if you extend a parent class and you have your own constructor, it overrides the parent class's constructor. It will not execute unless you explicitly execute it like this. So they basically say in their documentation, please call us because we need to do some things to get going. Yeah, this just says class name : Remember, this is the way you access a static function in a class, is with this syntax. And the constructor is a static class. So they're going to load, the first thing it's going to do, because we have a model, it's going to load the model. So, and it's going to find our people_model in the models directory. So our model has two functions. How it's going to find. Okay, so the model is this guy over here. It's a file called people_model.php. It is in a directory. It's a file. Yeah, it's a file in a directory called models. And then load model. So it goes to the models directory and looks for a people_model and assumes it's got a .php on the end.
You say it goes to the models directory.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's go. When you install, let's just take a detour here. How does it find all this stuff? So I'm actually going to look up at this server. So here's my directory called, it's in my directory. You guys have your you guys have your directories, and mine's called Look for Terry. And I have another subdirectory called Chapter 14 for this example. I installed CodeIgniter there. And so I unzipped it and just FTP'd it up to the server. These two directories and those two files came in. This one's probably not required, license.txt. This is open source code, it's free. The application directory is the one that we've been looking at. So there's the application, here's application controllers. Here's the one called models. So when you say load model, it goes to the models directory and looks for one called people_model, because that's what we asked for.
Put it in there.
Yeah, you got to put it in there or it won't be found.
The load model is
Oh, so we have to put our code.
So it knows where
The load model,
is the message that
Is-
says, go look in
that's right, the load model is a method that says go look in your models directory for this file that starts like this. That's right.
So most of our code goes under the subdirectories in application.
Right. Most of your code goes in the underneath the subdirectories in application. Controllers, the ones that you typically will use are controllers, models, and views. And again, views that they wanted us to further categorize the file, so they created a templates directory. It doesn't have to be called templates. They called it templates, and then they referred to it when they did the load views for those. So that's the directory structure. Now those configuration files that we looked at were right here. So when I did the installation, there's just a couple things we had to do to the config file. There was the one called the database.php, and I'm going to show you routes.php in a second, which does the shorthanding of the URLs for us.
It's not in the HT access.
It's not in the HT access. They have their own. If we just look at the config.php, when I did the installation, the only thing I had to do in here was tell it where my site was. So I went all the way, look for Terry and my directory. Now you can tell there's a bunch of other things. You remember that on the URL there's one called index.php. You can name that file anything you want. And this is the config file. You do that. And there's a bunch of other standard stuff in here, or more advanced configuration things. So I think we looked at our model. We were looking at our controller. So the one that does the one that I've actually executed is one called index. I haven't executed this one called view. This one called view would, the intention is it would show one person, okay, and this one shows a list of people. This is what's showing this this page. This controller is showing this page right here. So I'm going to add. Okay, so this is the call to the model that gets the data out of the database. This people model, the one I loaded up here, method get person. Well, where the heck is that? People model, get person, right there. Okay, so it's calling this method in that on that model that we created. That's going to return a list of the people in the database and put that array in an item called people in the data array. And then it's going to also populate one called title, like the other one did, and it's going to do the same thing that we saw before. Header a page called index and footer, and pass it the data array. So again, it's using PHP data arrays to kind of connect everything together, to connect the data to each other. So let's look at the actual view called index here. So here it is, index.php. So slightly more sophisticated than those two other views called about and home, which just had some text in it and a break. So this one's got a table. So it's got a table, and I'm going to put out the header. Okay, so here's the title, and then the header that we put out, and then I drop into PHP and going to loop through the $people array and get each person out. Each person is going to be a row of the database. So again, if we look at the
What's the colon after the first one? Line 3.
Question mark,
The word question mark.
the new bracket for PHP.
Is that something that's coded then?
I'm thinking. I don't know. Is that how you do it? Let's go here and say PHP for each. They certainly don't have it there. Yeah, but it's what's running it.
Take it out and run and see what happens.
Yeah, it does look like a typo. You know, none of these for each have this either. So basically what this one is doing is it's defining for each row this person variable, and now you can use the person, drops into it, echoes the first name, last name, all in the table data tags, and then ends the for each. Now let's look for one other thing here. PHP end for.
They're using brackets that simulate the ending.
Huh, look, I think it's required.
Oh, so that goes hand in hand if you want to do it that way.
Yeah, I think it goes hand in hand if you want to do it this way.
Because you're ending the PHP part, and then you're doing some HTML, and then going back to the PHP.
I think it kind of goes in hand with this end for each, because you don't have, you know, possibly you could do the same thing with for each and then a left brace or bracket, brace, curly bracket.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then drop into PHP and say, and put in,
Curly bracket.
yeah, a right curly bracket.
It's also interesting that we have the PHP in the beginning stuff.
Oh yeah, so here they're doing exactly what we just said. It is mainly so you can make start and end statements clearer when creating HTML and loops.
But that's not part of the PHP documentation.
Well, might be. Let's look. And for each. Yes, it is. You can also use the alternative syntax for each cycle.
Yeah, but that's in somebody's note.
Yeah, that's true.
Part of the documentation.
It isn't somebody's note.
That's the old way.
It could be an old way that's been deprecated. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So let's go back to here. I just kind of took this for granted. That's how you do it. You guys ask good questions. But basically, so to me, this kind of shows again that this is the view. It's just the part about the view. You basically only drop into PHP in the view to get data. It's typically what you end up doing.
Which is what you would do on a normal page.
Yeah, but your normal view page would have all kinds of other PHP gobbledygook in it to query the database and set up all of these variables. Okay, this is pretty simple. I mean, this is the content of the page. It's just all right here.
So, is it kosher to put a lot of IDs and classes and stuff on your tags? Do they want you to keep that separate too?
No, that's fine. That's part of your view. I would expect that to all go in here. This is just really simple.
And CSS here, I mean.
Your CSS stuff would probably go here too, or the first part of it goes up in your header, and you know, because you got standard header, and you probably use a standard CSS file.
Was there any rules as far as how does JavaScript get integrated with something like this? Because in a sense, like on jQuery, or you know, that's a separate file over here, and then you know, through the IDs and classes and attributes, you know, click on an element on the page, and then you know, you'll execute some JavaScript that way.
And the JavaScript gets sent down. I was just looking if they have any. They mentioned Java here at all.
JavaScript has these classes.
Provides a library to help you with certain common functions that you may want to use with JavaScript. Please note that Java. And what does it do for you? Okay, so this part up here that says experimental makes you a little bit worried that it's going to change, but it looks like they're trying to integrate Java into the ways of using JavaScript. They would probably go into your views or be included into your views, the actual scripts if you had to write them specifically.
Well, most of that, I can see they're listing a lot of functions up here. Like
yeah, they are.
I'm not sure where they're putting stuff. Usually the Java, the jQuery JavaScript file is, you know, someplace else.
Yeah.
And it's selecting, you know, actions by the class name or the ID name of the elements. So they figure out different page loads. jQuery goes through the entire DOM, and it just makes up a whole, you know, list that's hidden someplace so that when you go to signify something that I want to click on it, I want to do, you know, X, Y, and Z, and it goes and carries out.
Carries out that function. Yeah, I haven't read through this, so I don't. But it looks like they're thinking about it, how it would work with They make it very explicit that, hey, we don't require JavaScript to run, and they don't.
Yeah, but in other words, it doesn't conflict with, I guess, the idea of the quality control. That's why I was.
Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so. Okay, so
Sorry, can you go back to the view again? Yeah, so this file that essentially is parameter to come back to the folder.
So that file right there is being referenced right here. So it says load people, index, and again .php is added on the end.
And the model for the
right? So the model's getting loaded right here, and this, we're executing the method we defined to get the data out of the database. And then in the index, in the model, in the controller, we create the variable people in the data array, which is going to be an array of people, and then we're going to use that person, not people. We're going to use that person and get each of the elements out of the person and fill in our table and end up with this. Okay, so any other questions about what we've talked about?
What is object-oriented programming, right?
Well, if you notice, almost all of the tools that we try to go out on the web and use have object-oriented interfaces to them. It's just the way things are shared out there.
So my question in a sense is kind of both of them. What's the normal procedure in, laying out and coming up with a plan to do a page? Is it like the design and this to that? What procedure is normally used?
It seems like I've said this a lot, especially recently, which is, I don't know. So this is not a web design class. This is kind of the back end side of it. But you guys are typically having to do the whole thing, which means the web design too. So the way I approach it is, you basically have to come up with a look and feel for your site. Okay, that's where you start. Because how is my site going to look? What is the, almost all sites, they have a common top and a common set of navigation along somewhere on the site, and a common set of footers along the bottom, and that kind of defines. And then you have an area that's the dynamic part of the that changes. And that just seems to be a common design approach to sites, and it makes some sense because once somebody's in your site, they have an idea of how to drive it, and they don't have to learn from page to page how to drive your site. Navigation's always over here when I'm on this site. So with that, you would then, okay, I know what templates I need to create with CodeIgniter. Yeah, we're looking at views. I think that's probably where I'd start, looking at views, getting those, and you probably have to think somewhat about your data, even in the back of your mind now, because it's just going to be a long page with a lot of stuff on it, or is this going to, be a wide page, or how's this going to work? So you have to have your data in mind, but generally you get this concept of the way the site's going to look, and then you and then I think you probably go to the next layer, which is, well, what pages do I need in my site? You know, what kind of major functions do I need in the site? I'll need a home page, but what other pages do I need? Do I need a contents page? You know, what are the functions I'm going to need to do on the site? And then at that point, that would be that you're still just basically deciding what pages you need to. It's not a controller yet either. You know, you really haven't touched other than the views. But then, you know, at that point, as you get to a, you know, Tim probably could talk more about this in that he's done a lot with databases and database modeling and looking at the data, and you know, how is that going to interact into the user's environment? You know, how do I design the data and the database so that it fits my use scenarios and my customers' needs, basically. And you know, so you're going to start going into the database and probably go. The next step is you start defining the models files. What am I going to have to get out of the database? What do I have to put back in? What am I going to have to update? You can just write all your model files. The controllers might be the last thing you do, where you again, you glue them all together. The controller then loads the model, gathers the data, kind of packages it for the view, and then loads the view and passes it on to the view. Okay. So for this assignment, again, if you choose to take on this assignment, Mission Impossible, is to create a directory in your subweb for this assignment. Notice I don't start with copying it. It's going to be new. You'll need, I didn't say it here, but you'll need to download and install it comes in a zip file. You need to extract the zip file. Take basically that application directory and the system directory and that index.php and copy that up to this new directory. And then go through the, I would start with this column. Most of these pages are short. Okay, so they're not long. It gives you an even better overview of what I talked about. And then this tutorial actually creates a little application. This part creates that very first example. I think this introduction, somewhere up here, where you just created the static pages, just said this is a home page, this is the about page, goes through that, and then this actually goes through the creating of a little news application, which is similar to what I've done. There's one file I didn't show you yet, and that was the routes file. So again, most of their files that they intend you to modify have a lot of documentation at the head of them. Now, when it first came, it came with these two lines in it. Okay, so basically it says the default controller is going to be welcome, right? And when you didn't say anything at all, that's what it showed. When you did the first step with the about and home page, we modified the routes file to include to be in this way. So basically, the default controller was pages view. So the controller would go to the view controller by default, and then so that allowed you to not have to put view in there. You could then just put in the about, back here somewhere. And you got, basically it called the view controller with the parameter about. So that's what this did. And then we expanded it even further when I implemented the people pages. So it just basically says I don't know how to read this.
Colon any, is that something that's proprietary?
Yeah, that's code igniter parlance.
It's kind of regular expression.
It almost looks kind of like that, doesn't it? But route people to people, people/anything is going to be, people/view/anything. Yeah, whatever it was. And these bottom two still allows the first about and home to work. So both of them will work in this example. When you first do that, they don't put anything in the routes, and so you have to type in the controller and then the name. And so it's pretty straightforward then. Okay.
So is the homework basically doing what's underneath the tutor section?
Yep. So it's just doing this column. The reading is this column and kind of what you want to read out of general topics. I would probably at least go through helpers, okay, in this column, because you're going to be using all of these. You're going to be using controllers, reserved names, views, models, and I think understanding helpers is just going to be good. So I think that's one of the benefits of using this pathway.
To recap, so what are the main items of using this structure? The copies of the helpers or the whole?
So I think the general benefit that they're trying to do is make the PHP developer more productive, okay, in a way that doesn't take anything away from performance, and they didn't want to create a real heavyweight framework that was expensive, either performance or disk space or that kind of thing. But it's mostly to make the person productive. And so the only way to really how does that work? Why would this make them productive? Well, at first, it's not. Okay. Anytime you have to learn something like this framework, you're not going to be very productive at it the first time out of the box. But as you get more and more productive, get more and more familiar with it, to me, it looks like it would make you much more productive. And specifically things like, how do I access the database? And that's pretty simple. That's the connect stuff. I just put that once in my site, and it's all right there, none including these app bars, none of this, writing SQL statements. Got to understand what this get does. That's the overhead. You have to learn that. But once you get that, that's pretty short. I likened it when I first started coding in C#. It was really hard. It wasn't the syntax of the language that was so hard, or I knew object-oriented programs. It was all the things that C# library can do for you that I didn't know. It had so many libraries and objects underneath that until I knew about those things, I kept writing my own code. I started out trying to write my own serial COM driver. And I realized there's an object to do that. You know, it just does it for me, basically. And I started writing, oh, I got to parse XML. Wait a minute. There's an object that does that. All I do is say load, and it's got a DOM tree, and I just do these few things. I got to learn how to do that. But once I learned it, man, I could whip that out really fast. So I learned with C# to first ask, oh, it's got to do it for me. How does it do it for me? You know, and then I think that this is similar thing with a framework like this. What are the common things you got to do in PHP? Well, if this framework's worth its salt, it's figured out a way to do it to help you do it. All the stuff we've learned this semester, manipulating files, doing things with images. There's helpers for session stuff, you know, and saving sessions. There's cookie helpers to help you with saving cookies, and all that stuff we've learned this semester. So it's likely got a way to help you do that. So
If you put a website up and you use this, you actually have to have the application that's really money there.
there really is no application behind this. There's no program behind this. You are inheriting code.
Okay, so now
They're basic.
when you're finished with this, you could take a lot of the overhead or whatever and you could get rid of it and it would still run.
Well, you can't get rid of the code that you're using of theirs.
No, not at all, but I mean,
I don't know what overhead you're suggesting you get rid of.
the helper stuff, or, I mean, a lot of these other
Any of the parts that you're not using, you could certainly get rid of. But the whole thing was like 2 megabytes up on the server. It was really small for this. I mean, install Visual Studio nowadays and kind of have gigabytes on your.
So, I mean, sort of getting that point, so if you were to use this infrastructure, I don't even know what you call this.
Framework. They call it a framework.
Framework, right?
Yeah.
Just to implement like a, application or own site or whatever. You're saying that there's nothing there that you handed off to somebody else who wasn't familiar with. Theoretically, at least, somewhere that they can drill down and find everything they need to understand what's happening. Somewhere we're going to find what's in the CI model. We want to go that deep into what's
It's all going to be there.
all there.
Yeah. In fact, when I did the install that of this document that I was been referring to is actually installed as well. So this whole document is there. So, and this is a good point in that almost everything is handed off. At some point, you're not going to work on it forever. So anytime you start using something like this, you got to think about, well, what is the next guy going to do? And it's important because this guy that was trying to hire somebody wanted somebody with experience in CodeIgniter. So there's some overhead in learning to do that. So any framework that you choose to use has that overhead. Somebody's got to learn it. And Stephen, you mentioned a couple examples classes back where you had to pick up a site somebody had been working on that had some framework behind it that was mystical. And it makes it difficult when it's not very well documented and that kind of thing. So you got to keep those things in. You got to think of those things. This one passes a lot of tests for me. Small, relatively simple, came with its own documentation that was all, right there. I can kind of understand what it's doing for me. So, but it's certainly, if you start doing the site with this stuff, you don't just go halfway. You do it the whole way, and I think you'd want to do it the whole way, and you're kind of committed to it at that point. Because if you decide not to do it, be a lot of work to undo it. Okay. Any other questions? You guys online have been awful quiet, or maybe I just haven't been looking.
What's the comment there about jQuery is JavaScript? Interesting, yeah, right there. jQuery is JavaScript.
Yeah. You might be right, Jorg. I mean, that's... God, you almost said that an hour and a half ago, but we're just getting around to it. Hope you're still there. You want me to, Jim, you want me to sign up for another month? It's not a big deal. Yeah, I think I'll sign up for another month. So it'll be, he's asking when GoDaddy server is going to go away. And right now it'll go away on 12/14. But I'll sign up for one more month, and it'll be January 14th. So we can finish. So I was going to make the last, the deadline that cannot be extended for the last homework is going to be, I think it was going to be the 17th. Is that the Tuesday in finals week? 17th or 18th? 18th. So I think I put it right here. No, I didn't put it here.
Well, final project's not due till the 21st.
What final project?
Or in your homework, if you look at the bottom, that's what it says. In that table right there, the dates.
Important dates?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the end of finals week is the 21st. So let's make it the 18th. That's the Tuesday of finals week. Okay. And I'll update this so it says that. And I'll make this due the 18th of the 11th. So, and if you,
Would that be 16 also, just assignment 16? Because inside the details under 14 extra credit, you call it activity.
sure, I'll call it 16. My editor.
Just, I'm usually confused.
Yeah, so am I. So am I. I'm confused too. Quite a bit of time. And if you go back, I've noticed that I took more than 30. I mentioned at the beginning that I'll take a max of 30 points off. And there's a few assignments that for some folks that I took more than 30 points off because they were later than that. I'll go back and just take 30 points off for those. But if you go back and do an assignment and want to get credit for me, please email me and let me know that you've done it, because I don't want to have to go back to all old assignments everywhere and see if you've done them or not. Okay. But if you have done them, let me know. Also, check out your, what I have posted as your grades. Make sure you agree. Well, even if you don't agree, make sure I have some supporting reason for putting those grades there. I didn't just make a mistake. So if I've missed something, or I didn't, a few folks I didn't see where they put their classes, and they needed to go back and they needed to tell me where they put their classes for that example when they did the class stuff. They had done it, I just didn't see it. So.
Did you ever look at one project that was 11?
I went back and looked at 9, saw that.
I saw that. I looked at that, and it's been a while. You haven't looked at it.
Yeah, check it again, Mark, and email me. I'm happy to go back and look at it again.
I was actually 2 days late on that one.
It's only 10 points. I think I did it, but check. Sometimes, I usually was grading things, Wednesday, Thursday. Sometimes I went to Saturday, I was grading things. And, I graded on Wednesday, you turned it on Thursday. And so I put in there nothing yet. And sometimes I didn't get go back to see it. So if I've missed something that's there, just let me know. Okay. Thanks. Any questions online? Okay, I'm looking, Jim. If convenient, thanks. Sorry. Yeah, 15 and 16 are extra credit. So if you think you have a good enough grade, you don't have to do them. If you want to get, I think it's good learning material, though. I mean, I'm not trying to downgrade their importance to your life.
We're going to have a lecture on the exam slot.
Oh, that's right, Cal. I'll check your login. We will not have a lecture then. We'll have a lecture next time, which is not finals week. It's the week before finals. It'll just be review. I'm going to be here. We can just chat, ask questions, see how you're doing on this, or any assignment. It'll be pretty informal. But I won't. Next week. I won't present any new material or assign any new assignments. I'm done assigning assignments.
We got all the way through the voting night.
For the assigned time in finals week, the school used to be a stickler about it. You have to come in the after pretend to have a final.
No, they asked me when I thought my final was, and I told them I wasn't having one. They said, okay.
So we don't have to fill up our bit.
No, I don't think there is a time for the final for this class, because I told them I didn't need a final
I mean,
for
there's
this
a
class.
general schedule. It's based on the time of the normally.
Oh.
I forget what it is.
Yeah. They actually, I think that's a general rule, but they also they actually have a schedule out for when different classes finals are, and you'll notice that mine will say none. I told them that. They were fine with that. And I think if I think the assignments are a good indication of how you understand this material. I don't want to ask you questions like, what is the tag for? I don't know what to ask. So. Yeah, take all your computers away, make you do it on a piece of paper. Okay, guys, I think we're done. Unless you have any more questions. Sure. Let's see if I can check your login right now, Kyle.
So take care. See you next week.
Okay, see you.
I can keep twisting your arm.
Actually, this is going to help me.
I'm going to go back and review your lectures and see if I can find the one to that array.
Okay, oh, yeah.
Try the one after Thanksgiving.
Let me just show you here real quick.
Problems that were
11B.
Oh, really? Really?
I just type in
When I run stuff off, I always check it.
Okay, so what I was talking about is I dumped, this is the array. If you do a bar dump on a multi-dimensional array, this is the what it puts out. Okay, so this is saying the outside array has 5 items. Okay, the first item, item 0, is an array that has 2 things in it.
Right.
So now we're getting the multi-array part of it. The first thing inside that array is a string that's 10 long, and the second thing is an integer that has the value 2. So that set of braces right there, that's the first item in that.
Well,
Now, including how do I address it? Because when I tried to address it as array bracket 0 bracket 0, it didn't like it.
But for some reason.
So I think the way you address it is array bracket 0, comma 0, left right bracket.
Print C or bracket?
Bracket.
Okay.
Took the time to say, well,
Pretty sure that's bracket.
crossing the street test.
But I'll go back and look and see my finger there.
Okay. It's around this, and
Fine.
it's around this one about charting and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Give me an email if it doesn't.
I'll have to just,
Yeah, I email you
Okay.
back.
I'll just send you my link
Okay.
to my Flash assignment, because I did a thing on those.
Oh, you did? Yeah, oh, cool. I want to see that. That's great. I was trying to think that Party Bears, you know, did have a role on and if you don't know who some of the actors are, you know, like Howard McNear is Floyd the Barber or something. Yeah,
On Neighbor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, but, you know, you'll hear him on other CBS shows, he's a rotten killer.
I haven't heard that.
The actors go around all over the place.
During Gunsmoke, he was having a lot of health problems, and I guess they had a, Harley Berry used to carpool him back and forth to work.
Oh.
And there was a couple of episodes where he could barely sit in the chair and really was performing.
Yeah, I haven't heard that in a long time. I do know that on one of the episodes, this where I think it's Paul Freeze. Substitute.
Right, there was, and you could tell the difference.
Yeah.
It just was